Manx Radio's Update with Dave Moore.
The time is 5 o'clock. You're listening to Manx Radio. I am Dave Moore, and this is Update. Welcome to the programme. Half an hour of the latest news in the Isle of Man, plus Manx sport, business and travel updates, along with the newsmakers in person. Coming up, it's World Suicide Prevention Day. However, the issue of suicide in the Isle of Man is still a huge topic, according to a charity. A local authority is insisting antisocial behaviour amongst its town's youths is not as big a problem as some think. And FC Isle of Man are in action this evening and looking to put last weekend's last gasp disappointment behind them. That's all coming up in the next half an hour. First of all, though, the update news headlines with Chanel Saku.
Fastamai. Police have been granted additional time to question two people arrested in connection with an incident in the south of the island. The two individuals remain in custody and are said to be continuing to assist with inquiries. A Manx addiction charity has shared a warning regarding the recreational use of ketamine on the island. Motivate says the drug's popularity is on the rise and people are experiencing severe harms as a result of becoming reliant on it. And EasyJet is not currently offering flights between the Isle of Man and Belfast after the end of next month. Passengers can't book travel past the 25th of October. The Bristol route has also been suspended between the 30th of September and the 31st of March. In international news, MPs have voted to cut the winter fuel allowance for millions of pensioners, except the country's poorest. The result means around 10 million people will now miss out on the payment of up to £300. Moving on, the UK has announced new sanctions against Iran, which has been accused of providing ballistic missiles to Russia. Speaking in London, the US Secretary of State Anthony Blinken claims the Kremlin will likely use them within weeks in Ukraine. And Prince William has told crowds on a visit to South Wales that it's good news his wife has finally finished her chemotherapy, but she still has a long way to go. He made the comment while he was carrying out engagement celebrating Welsh sport and culture. Those are your headlines. News at 6.
Thank you, Chanel. Moving on to the weather, bright with sunny intervals, but there is a risk of a few passing showers developing at times. Feeling quite breezy in fresh to strong northwest winds. Minimum temperature tonight, 7 Celsius. A mixture of sunshine and some rather sharp showers tomorrow. Strong northwest winds for much of the day and a best temperature of just 13 Celsius. And continuing unsettled on Thursday with more showers, possibly turning heavy at times. Moderate to fresh northwest winds and temperatures only up to 12 degrees Celsius in the afternoon.
Manx Glass and Glazing can supply and install single, double and triple glazing. Call 674 573 or visit the showroom on the Snugborough Trading Estate.
Simply income protection from Kestrel Insurance. A choice of benefits. Simple underwriting and peace of mind with a regular income for up to 2 years if you're unable to work due to illness or injury. Kestrel Insurance is registered with the Isle of Man Financial Services Authority.
Carpetland, the carpet specialist with the island's best value carpets in stock. Often fitted within a week. Furnitureland for 3-piece suites, dining and living room furniture and a selection of amazing beds. Carpetland and Furnitureland, West Street, Ramsey.
Manx Mobility and Onken have it all. Daily living aids, wide-fitting shoes, rise recliners, beds and scooters, including lightweight and airline-approved models. Call in and see how our expert team can make your life easier. Manx Mobility at the top of Summer Hill.
At Bond Fabrics, we're not just a fabric shop. As well as curtains and upholstery and dress and costume fabrics, we've knitting and crocheting wools, made-to-measure curtain and blind service, plus poles and tracks. Visit Strand Street, Douglas, call 611856 or see bondfabrics.im.
You're listening to the Isle of Man's quintessential daily news and current affairs roundup. Update on Manx Radio.
Welcome to the programme. Police have issued a further update following on from an incident in the south of the island at the weekend. News editor Tessa Hawley joins me in the studio now. Tessa, what is the latest?
So this afternoon, police have confirmed that they've been granted additional time to keep two people who were arrested in Port St Mary on Sunday in custody. The Isle of Man Constabulary says they're continuing to assist with inquiries and says whilst this process continues, it would ask people to avoid speculating.
OK, so we know the bomb disposal unit was brought to the island on Sunday evening. Any more information on that?
Yes, so today police have acknowledged that they have been assisted by specialist bomb disposal or colleagues. Officers say this was to ensure the safety of everyone involved. They've also confirmed that there is no explosive risk at a linked address in Park Beg in Port Erin, which remains cordoned off. The Isle of Man Constabulary adds it's conducting further inquiries utilising specialist search officers and says it's grateful to a number of partner agencies who are assisting.
On Sunday, a number of people were evacuated from their homes. Have they all been able to return?
They have. Police say there is no ongoing need to displace people from their homes. However, they have warned that the scene around that property in Park Beg does remain relevant to their inquiries, so there will be a continued police presence in the area. But they have reiterated today that there is no wider risk or threat to the public.
Thank you, Tessa.
You're listening to the Isle of Man's quintessential daily news and current affairs roundup. Update on Manx Radio.
A charity in the Isle of Man says the amount of people affected by suicide in the island is becoming staggering, and suicide rates, sadly, are not decreasing. This all comes on World Suicide Prevention Day. I'll Stand Up to Suicide encourages people to talk about the topic and move it away from the shadows. Grace Eames is a trustee.
The aim of World Suicide Prevention Day is to raise awareness of suicide. We don't speak about suicide in society. It's been viewed in the past as a crime, as we all know. And I think awareness of suicide, it can happen. It happens around us. And we can all take a part and play a role in preventing suicide.
Talk to me then about the situation here on the island, or your understanding of it.
So suicide rates on the Isle of Man we believe them to be not decreasing. So that's why, as a charity, we came together last year to create the charity, because the amount of people that are affected by suicide on the Isle of Man is becoming staggering in many cases, and we felt moved to take some action to do something. It's not just the government's fault. It's not just the Manx Care's fault. It's the society as a whole has got to take a responsibility for being able to speak to people, to talk about it openly. I certainly speak to my children about it and have done. I speak to my friends, my colleagues. It's about raising the awareness, to move it from the shadows and to take it away from being a shameful act to something that is fully preventable. And by having the conversation, by intervening, by just asking someone, how are you? And waiting for the answer.
And you mentioned that the charity was started last year, and how many people have been using the service since it was set up?
The phone stats are, I would say, steady, but also increasing, because I think people are becoming more aware of us. We've managed to train every month. We've trained about between 10 and 15 people every month, so that's quite a bit of exposure of people who are more aware of suicide.
And you were talking about the QPR courses that you offer and the questions that you are talking about. I think people would be surprised by how direct they are as well, and how to the point. There's no sort of trying to skirt around the issue. It is straight to are you thinking about killing yourself straight away, isn't it?
Yes, it is. I mean, there's no right or wrong way of doing that, really. It is direct and to the point. If somebody says no, they say no. But it may open the door to have that conversation that could save somebody's life. And the only way you get to do it is by asking that question.
Grace Eames, a trustee of the charity I'll Stand Up to Suicide, talking to our reporter Amy Griffiths. Castletown commissioners say there isn't high levels of vandalism in the town, despite a recent spout of antisocial behaviour. But it says publicising incidents ensures the community is aware of the problem. Our local democracy reporter Emma Draper has more details.
Castletown commissioners often post on social media about antisocial behaviour happening in the town. Recent incidents include setting fires in public toilets and at Pulson Park, as well as damage to children's play equipment. The local authority says each act costs ratepayers financially and can mean facilities have to close. It says the harbourside toilets, where the majority of the incidents happen, are under the ownership of the Department of Infrastructure and were previously supposed to be moved into the hands of the commissioners. However, this hasn't happened, and Chair Beth Cannon says the department has been slow to respond to requests to meet and discuss the issue. She believes if the transfer happened fully, improvements could be made to prevent the problems. Currently, a short-term licence is in place, and Mrs Cannon says it's disappointing that Minister Tim Crookall hasn't been in contact with the board. The board wants to take ownership of the toilets so they can make the block more welcoming by opening 24/7 and including an accessible changing place facility. Mrs Cannon says there would be reservations about leaving the town hall toilets open whilst issues continue. In January, the commissioners announced it would be temporarily closing the town hall between 1 and 2 p.m. to align with the school's lunch hour. Mrs Cannon also says she understands resource challenges faced by the police, but a reduction in community policing in the south is frustrating. The commissioners are aware of the behind-the-scenes work of the officers, but she's appealing to residents who witness antisocial behaviour to report it to the police or the town clerk. The Department of Infrastructure and the Isle of Man Constabulary have been contacted for comment.
Local democracy reporter Emma Draper. You're tuned to Manx Radio. This is Update. And after being held to our last gasp draw at the weekend, FC Isle of Man face another tough test this evening. They're away at North West Counties Football League Premier Division League leaders Ramsbottom United. And what's more, the team's boss Paul Jones says people should expect a much changed side tonight from the one which was involved in a 1-1 thriller with Bury at the Bowl 3 days ago.
It's not just the Saturday. If you look at the season so far, we've played an awful lot of games away from home. Saturday was a game at home after a stretch of away games, so that cumulative kind of fatigue takes its effect over time. So the squad will go out, I think, just before we get there tonight, and there are a significant number of changes due to injuries and availability, and obviously Charlie's suspended, Pinny was out through injury anyway. We've picked up 3 injuries on Saturday, which hopefully, if we don't push them tonight, means they'll be available for the weekend. We've had a few players that have, through work in personal circumstances, who were available are now not available at short notice because of things beyond their control. So yeah, we've got a good group actually coming away, but some young faces. Yeah, it's going to be a real challenge tonight against an opposition who are doing well, but the makeup of the group and actually players that we're going to have in the top areas of the pitch will cause Ramsbottom significant problems. So I guess it's my job to make sure I set everybody up so as we're nice and strong out of possession, and then when we have the ball we can exploit the areas where we know they're vulnerable, and we definitely have the players in the squad to do that tonight. The Ramsbottom squad that we're facing tonight is very different from the one that we played last year. They have a good budget this year. They brought in some real experience and players who've done well, not just at this level of football, but a level or two above. It's no real surprise to anybody who knows about this level of football that they're towards the top end of the table and been getting good results. Looking at how they've recruited and how they're going about doing what they're doing, they've got firm intentions of being at the top end of the table. We go from a very difficult game on Saturday into a very difficult one tonight, and I believe in the group that we can put a really good account of ourselves on the pitch, and if we do that, we'll give ourselves a good chance of bringing some points home.
The game kicks off at the Harry Williams Riverside Stadium at 7:45 this evening. Now, following this programme at 5:30.
They're designed to ride out the storms of the Irish Sea, the trawlers and fishing boats who farm the waters off our coast. So why did disaster overtake a Scottish boat and a crew of 7 in January 2000?
Major air and sea operation began at 6 o'clock last night after the Solway Harvester sent out a mayday call. Coast Guard say conditions at the time were horrendous.
Using recordings made at the time, the tragic story of the Solway Harvester. Why was she swamped by seas that should have been manageable? And what have we learned from the disaster? 5:30 this evening, the legacy of the Harvester.
You're tuned to Manx Radio. This is Update, and a Ramsey Commissioner says proposals made in government's waste management strategy could have major changes that would significantly affect waste services in the town. Ewan McGuinness believes it's too early to predict if the cost would be cheaper if the service was centralised.
I definitely think it could have been done in a far more inclusive manner, especially when you consider that waste management is pretty much done by local authorities across the island. You would expect to be consulted a bit personally and have a bit more in-depth engagement from the department rather than the same consultation that the rest of the island has. I think it's a very simplistic, high-level question, and you will get very simplistic, high-level answers. The devil's in the detail. Ramstown Commissioners currently have around 20% of our annual rates budget going towards waste collection. That's a mixture of ongoing staffing costs, waste disposal costs, and capital investment with the refuse collection vehicles and other equipment. You can't just unpick that and say that it'll be cheaper for Island Man residents. There's no guarantee that'll work out, and there's no also guarantee on the level of service. It's easy to sort of say, oh, well, we'll have cheaper waste disposal costs because of the economies of scale, because we do an island-wide. But until you actually process that and work out what each individual area actually gets, what it wants, what it needs, and what's required, I think it's too early to make that statement.
Would centralisation solve the issue at the Northern Civ Community site, do you think?
If it was in a hypothetical world where the Northern Civic Community site was centralised, then it would, because there would be legislation in place to enforce payment of fees from all the contributing parishes. It would be agreed and set out, and no one could argue about it or pull out. So it would fix that problem in a sense. It seems a bit of a sledgehammer to crack a nut when really all we want to do is just provide a good service in the north. But in simple terms, yes, probably it would.
Let's move on to business now. And a report carried out by Standard Banks revealed a lack of understanding of ESG investments among customers. Over 1,000 offshore clients were surveyed, including many based in the Isle of Man. More than 3/4 of respondents didn't even know what the acronym ESG stands for. Environmental, social and governance investing grew rapidly in both investor and public consciousness between 2017 and 2022, and Standard Bank say they saw global ESG assets surpass the $30 trillion mark in 2022. A spokesperson for the firm says despite this, the survey shows there is a clear need for education around the basics of ESG, and investors need to be shown meaningful impact during portfolio review sessions. Meanwhile, European and UK stocks were lower today. The more downbeat picture for European stocks comes after regional markets closed higher yesterday, shrugging off last week's negative sentiment. The S&P 500 and the Nasdaq rose today as most mega-cap stocks gained, with focus now moving to key inflation data later this week that could provide more clarity on the extent of the Federal Reserve's expected interest rate cut on September 18th. The dollar slid against major currencies today, consolidating Monday's gains ahead of key inflation data and a widely anticipated US presidential debate, even though both their outcomes are unlikely to affect overall monetary policy. Oil prices gave up the previous day's gains as weak Chinese demand offset US supply disruptions from Tropical Storm Francine and global oil oversupply risks that continue to weigh on the market. And gold prices held firm above the $2,500 mark as market participants position themselves ahead of US inflation data for further clues on the depth of interest rate cuts by the Federal Reserve next week. Meanwhile, in company news, shares of tech giant Apple fell after the European Court of Justice ruled that the iPhone maker must pay £11 billion in back taxes to Ireland. Going on to the markets, the FTSE 100 is at 8,214, that's down 0.69%. The Dow Jones is at 40,683, that's down 0.36%. The Nasdaq's at 16,954, that's up 0.41%. On the exchange rates, the pound is 1.307 against the dollar and 1.185 against the euro. In commodities, gold is at $2,514, that's up 0.34%. With Brent at $69.27, that's down 3.6%.
I'm running late again. Do you know where I put my car keys?
In the fridge.
Where's my phone?
Under the dog basket.
Bye.
You haven't forgotten that we're seeing Ramsey Crookall later?
Oh, no, of course not. 5 p.m, is it?
2:45.
I'll be there.
Life is busy. That's why Ramsey Crookall's team takes time to help you make a mindful investment decision, considering all the options, giving you full control of your financial future. Less stress, more assurance.
Forgot to put my shoes on.
Oh.
See how we can make your money work for you. Call 717171 or visit ramseycrookall.com. Licensed and regulated by the Isle of Man Financial Services Authority.
You're listening to the Isle of Man's quintessential daily news and current affairs roundup. Update on Manx Radio.
It's hoped a new unofficial world record for the largest ever T-Rex race will be set this weekend. Expedition Limitless is hosting its final fundraiser for the year in aid of Manx Men Cup and is hoping to get as many people dressed as dinosaurs in Douglas. Martin Malone is one of those organising the T-Rex Thunder Run, which will take place on Douglas Promenade.
It's something very unique for the Isle of Man. We're going to have, hopefully, 500 people dressed as T-Rexes running a 2.5 kilometre course along Douglas Prom, or walking.
How did the idea of dressing up in the dinosaur suits come in?
It actually came from Expedition Limitless 2023. One of our team members decided to bring a T-Rex outfit to the Arctic, and on the very final day, as we approached the end of the expedition, and afterwards, while we were all celebrating, we came up with an idea of, I wonder how what's the world record for the largest number of T-Rexes in one place at any given time. And we started developing the idea. It's huge. It's well over 1,000. But we discovered that there's never been a proper T-Rex race. So in effect, if we can get as many T-Rexes as possible, or people dressed as T-Rexes, I should say, to Douglas Prom, we will set an unofficial world record for the largest ever T-Rex race as part of our goal to raise £100,000 for Manx Mencap. In fact, we've exceeded our 100,000. This is going to raise more money for them.
How will these funds help the charity?
They're very much an underfunded charity. They look after people in our community with learning disabilities, or indeed their families, and support their families as well. They're often struggling for cash to provide the services that they offer, which are super valuable. If you've got a child with learning disabilities, for example, an autistic child, it's a full-time job, and sometimes there's no respite for the parents. And also, there's many other services that they provide, full spectrum across the board for those with learning disabilities. This money that we're raising for them, over £100,000, will be life-changing for many of the families they look after, and it just allows them to do so much more good in our community. This is like years of funding for them.
Manx Radio Travel, driven by Quayside Tyres and Service Centre.
And we'll keep this brief. Everything's on time at the airport. However, the sailing tonight, the one that's at risk is the 7:45 Manxman departure for Heysham. Could be possibly disrupted or cancelled. A decision will be made at 5:30.
Quayside Tyres and Service Centre with 1 year's free engine warranty from Castrol. Get more with
Cabinet Office Minister Kate Lord-Brennan is defending the decision not to host the government conference in the evenings or over the weekend, saying there are other opportunities to speak to the island's highest-ranking politicians.
It's been developed really in discussions with business, and I think that in many respects for people that are wanting to engage in that way, it's perfectly fine and acceptable to have that in the working day. And we will do the Council of Ministers roadshows, which are likely to be in the evening again next year. So it's you need to try and get things focused for different people, but you need to be able to deliver a full agenda, and that's what's provided in this conference with a range of topics.
And last year around 750 people attended over the 2 days. That is less than 1% of the island's population. So what has government done over the last year to try and attract more people to the conference?
Well, I think that we do think about how to make this is really about actually the public having a chance to talk to ministers and find out about what government is doing and about the different issues that the island may be dealing with in terms of challenges and opportunities. So there's clearly different ways of that happening.
But the fact that this is less than 1% of the island's population, the people who attended last year, do you think that shows people are disengaged with government at the moment?
I think that you can't expect there to be sort of full and high attendance at every single point of engagement that government offers. There was really high attendance too at the events run in April, and I think that there'll be good attendance for this event, particularly for the business community.
Accessibility has been a major point. People saying bus routes to the Combe is quite difficult. Yes, there's ample parking. So have public transport users been kept in mind?
So if anybody has got any concerns about transport to the Comis, then what they can do is they can visit the website. Also, they can get in touch with contact iomgc@gov.im if they've got any queries or questions or need some assistance in terms of getting from where they're going from to the Comis. Perhaps if they need to get from the bus stop to the Comis, then that can be arranged by contacting that.
I was listening to Kate Lord-Brennan's interview this morning, and I was just flabbergasted by the complete detachment from reality of it. The idea that a few hundred people, well, a few hundred of Comin's chums, from the Institute of Directors and Chamber of Commerce and such like, will be sitting there in the Comis clapping politely in a sort of Chinese party congress fashion to all the blather that they come out with, blah engagement, blah this, blah that, when all we have to do is look around and see the vast quantity of issues that actually need to be discussed and need to be addressed. But oh no, let's have our nice little Comin bubble with all our chums appreciating, and we can all slap on the back and have a lovely mutual admiration society.
It doesn't sit right with me out of the Comis, and that is a place where you can access only by your own personal transport.
Yeah.
taxi or otherwise. The average Joe Bloggs is working. He can't get out on the bus. There is a bus stop, but it's out in the middle of the main road, and you got about half a mile walk just to the entrance. So nobody's going to walk out there if the weather's inclement. So they're pretty well guaranteed a self-serving audience and speaking to the already converted.
Why did Kate Lord Brennan skip past the issue of walking from the bus stop, active travel, to the Comis Hotel when she was asked it? I think that's appalling. And I think it's appalling that they're doing this hidden, if you like, on the side, but in plain view, but you can't come because we don't really want you there. I think the whole issue of government is falling apart. They're not telling the truth. They won't admit there's any problems. And I think Bonzo's hit it nail on the head. They want to have a little chat quietly offline with people who they don't want to invite over because it would show up those people as being part of their future plans or not part of their future plans. And it's just appalling. This should be something that's held in public in an available place where you can get to by public transport without having to walk 500 miles.
Man in Line listeners today responding to the comments from Cabinet Officer Minister Kate Lord Brennan ahead of this week's government conference. We now move on to sport, and joining us in the studio is Rob Pritchard. Faster my Dave. Well, we're going to start matters football, and the Isle of Man Football Association is set to continue its partnership with long-term sponsors Canada Life International. The company is extending its sponsorship of the Men's Premier League, Men's Combination 1, Women's Premier League, Women's FA Cup and Women's Floodlit Cup for a further 3 years up to 2027. Well, this latest agreement, which will also see the firm continue to sponsor the Women's National Team and Player of the Month awards, will take the association between the two parties up to the 20-year milestone after the company first came on board in 2007. Well, Isle of Man FA President Tony Mepham says they are so grateful for this ongoing support, which he says makes a huge difference across the local game. Elsewhere, Isle of Man pro cyclist Tyler Hannay claimed a stage victory during competition in China over the weekend. The St Piran competitor crossed the line in first on the sixth stage of the Tour of Poyang Lake on Sunday in a time of 2 hours, 28 minutes and 15 seconds. Well, in the following two phases of the meeting yesterday and today, Hannay has maintained 32nd spot in the general classification with 2 days of the event to go. Elsewhere in cycling, both Manx competitor Max Walker and Ireland resident Ben Swift concluded their respective campaigns in the 2024 Tour of Britain at the weekend. Swift finished strong, claiming a podium finish in third on the sixth and final stage on Sunday and ended the meeting 15th in the general classification. Walker, meanwhile, in the Great Britain squad was a non-finisher on the last stage, having secured 4 top 25 finishes to that point. Meanwhile, another Ireland competitor in Lizzie Holden was in action at the Tour de Romandie Feminine in Switzerland at the weekend, finishing 61st in the GC. And finally, in athletics, Manx athlete Krista Kane has taken a notable victory during this year's Cheshire Half Marathon. The Ireland competitor took overall victory in the women's race and the V35 female class at the meeting in a time of 1 hour, 18 minutes and 52 seconds. The Best Athletics Club member finished nearly 2 minutes clear of the next fastest female runner. Sorry, Rob, just before you go, FC Isle of Man in action tonight against North West Counties Football League Premier Division leaders Ramsbottom United. The game's getting underway at 7:45. Any team news?
Not just yet. We are expecting that in the next hour or two. The team are in transit, if you like, at the moment over to the Harry Williams Riverside Stadium. Very close record between these two sides in the only two meetings during last season. Ramsbottom United were 2-1 winners in the first meeting between the sides on Ramsbottom United territory before FC Isle of Man won the reverse fixture also by a 2-1 scoreline, so very close indeed. But just listening to Paul Jones earlier, two things he mentioned kind of caught my eye just a little bit really. Is that one thing, he was expecting a much changed squad. He was going to name a much changed squad this evening, but also how much Ramsbottom United have improved this season so far. So maybe expecting a bigger test than last season.
Thank you, sports reporter Rob Pritchard. And that's it for Update this evening, compiled from the resources of Manx Radio's news department. Thank you to newsreader Chanel Sakou. And don't forget, coming up after this programme at 5:30, the Solway Harvester Remembered, an Island Life special presented to you by John Moss. And the stories you've heard on this show and much more Manx news, plus interviews and podcasts, and the web's biggest source of Manx videos are all at manxradio.com and via the free Manx Radio app. Just like Manx Radio on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, or X as it's now known, and subscribe to the Manx Radio YouTube channel. And of course, if you have a comment on the news agenda, perhaps a story you think we should be covering, or just want to say hello from near or far, then please email update@manxradio.com. That's it from me. I'll be back with Update again tomorrow night at 5 o'clock.